So you've decided you don't want to work that typical 9 to 5 desk job. You want something more exciting, maybe something outdoors where you're working in nature or with animals, or a job that lets you travel to different countries and experience new things. But before you make any kind of decision, consider this. What are some jobs that are a lot less fun than people expect? In this video, we might burst a few bubbles and challenge some preconceived notions about jobs that may seem amazing, but have a lot more downsides than people think. So sit back, relax, and let's debunk some career myths together. Here we go. Number 1, professional photographer. Quote, not like hobbyist, but business owning photographer. Sucks the love right out of your work. Because you started the business to take pictures. Then Karen doesn't like the way she looks in one of them, so she wants the whole set for free, plus a reshoot for free, plus those images for free. Then the 2 high school kids getting into a very ill-advised marriage at exactly 18 years old wants to book you for their wedding, but their budget is only $50. Then Karen calls back because she loves your work and wants to pay for another shoot, but only if you agree to do her friend's daughter's destination wedding for free. Then you get a call from your last bride. It's been 2 weeks since their wedding. Where the F are her pictures? Then a client finds out you don't support their candidate and tries to take you to court to get her money back. Then some Instagram influencer who thinks she's influencing people offers a collab where you take professional photos of her, and she's not going to pay. And then you get some entitled mom who wants you to photograph every day of her newborn's first year of life for $100. I went back to doing photography as a hobby, not as a profession, end quote. Yeah, photography is one of those jobs that's great in theory, but then there are all those people you need to deal with. I'd personally much rather be a mortician, where I wouldn't need to deal with people at all. Well, living people anyway. Number 2, actor. Quote, all the ones we see on TV and movies are the 0.0001% of incredibly lucky and talented people who manage to thrive in a hostile and overcrowded industry. And even when you are working, the actual job itself is 99% sitting on an apple crate in hot makeup, waiting for some folks to move a lighting fixture. Then you say 3 lines over and over and over again for an hour, and then you rap, end quote. Yes, while most of us would love to be on the big screen, on big budget films and TV shows, the reality is that the supply-demand dynamics of becoming an actor are not in your favor. There are just too few productions and too many people vying to perform in those spots. And even those actors who do eventually make it all have stories of how difficult it is to continue finding work. The actual filming part of it also sounds much more tiring and tedious than people think. Number 3, flight attendant. You're on call forever, have a terrible schedule, have no life, and make no money for 5 to 10 years. While you work for peanuts, you can't afford to use your flight benefits in any substantial way. Then when you finally get a chance to use your benefits for a trip, you have to fly standby, which means you aren't guaranteed to get on the flight you want. Then if you do make it out of town, you better have like a week off so you can make damn sure you're back in your base city in time for your next work shift. Did I mention there's an active US legislation that allows airlines to exploit? So you don't get paid for certain hours that you actually need to be working? For example, flight attendants don't get paid for boarding or any time the plane is at the gate. Worst job ever, end quote. Yes, most people want to become flight attendants to visit different cities and countries and live a jet-setting lifestyle. But what most people don't realize is that it's often a demanding schedule with irregular hours, can take a physical toll on your body, especially your feet, all while dealing with those grumpy people. Plus, the pay isn't all that great, especially for what you have to endure. In the US, the median annual wage for flight attendants was around $56,000, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. Number 4, writer. Quote, I always thought it was my absolute dream job, but the only job I could get after college was working in a content mill as a blog writer. I used to work 70-hour work weeks, staring at the computer in the basement of an old bank writing BS articles about the dangers of mold, fence cleaning, and why you need a commercial awning. And the dream turned into a nightmare, end quote. Yes, being a blog writer seems like tireless work. And of course, many would love to become novelists like J.K. Rowling or suspense writer James Patterson, but the reality is there are drawbacks to becoming a writer, including the solitary nature of writing, which can lead to feelings of isolation, the financial instability of not being able to secure a steady income, as well as the competitive market and emotionally draining nature of submitting manuscripts and potentially getting rejected after months, maybe even years of work. Number 5, traveling for work. Quote, I traveled 85% plus for my job for years. Had a colleague who whined that he was so jealous until he hit the road and quit after less than a year. Yes, I got to go to some amazing places, but more often than not, I was in a crappy hotel in a crappy location. Even in great places, your colleagues or customers go home to their families, and as much as I love exploring alone, it does get lonely. I finally stopped when I got assigned a new and fairly attractive destination, and all I could think of was, How long is that flight? And can someone else do it? I sure miss my exec platinum airline status though, end quote. Yes, talk to any person who works in consulting or any profession where you have to travel during the work week every week, and they'll tell you it's nice initially, but gets very old and lonely after a while, especially if you have to be away from family. Number 6, pilot. Quote, you could lose your career with a single illness or injury, which could be happening to me soon. Another user writes, not sure of the exact details, but I have a friend who's done tons of hours and has been planning on being a pilot his whole life and was recently diagnosed with epilepsy at age 20. I can't recall if he's ever actually had an episode or seizure. I totally understand why he shouldn't fly anymore, but still unfortunate to lose something you're passionate about, end quote. Wow, yeah, that's something I never even thought about, but I'm sure these pilots are required to get health checkups all the time, and if they're at high risk of having a medical episode like a seizure or heart attack, it just doesn't make sense for the airline to take that kind of risk. Definitely something to consider if you're planning to become a pilot. Number 7, teacher. Quote, summer's off. Cool. Week off for Thanksgiving? Cool. 2 weeks off for Christmas? Cool. Entitled parents? Awful. School district and administration wanting you to do 2 different things? Awful. The kids? Okay. I love the kids so much, but they absolutely break your heart 100% of the time. There are a-holes, sure, but those aren't the ones who break your heart. It's those kids you can't help, whether it's from a terrible home life, bullying, or they just aren't smart. It's those kids who you go above and beyond for, but at the end of the day, you can't be there for them all the time, end quote. Yes, how many teachers go into the profession thinking, I love working with kids, it'll be great. But then there's dealing with frustrating parents, not to mention the school district around standardized testing and crafting the curriculum around hitting certain metrics. Overall, being a teacher is also incredibly tiring, emotionally draining, low paying, and often very underappreciated work, especially given the incredible value teachers provide in caring for and equipping the next generation. Number 8, TV and film production. Quote, I think most people dream of being the actor, the director, the people making the creative decisions, or the big shot producer calling the shots. But most of the people working in TV and film production are part of a machine, the grind, working in a system, trying to climb up to wherever they want to be. Many don't get to actualize their creative vision. Also, the industry can be project-based, i.e. job security concerns, and location-limited to New York, LA, maybe a few other cities. Pay can be low starting out too, though it can be good if you work your way up. But I did enjoy the type of people that work these jobs. A little more fun than the business folk I work with now, end quote. Yes, just a sobering reminder here that only the chosen few are able to make their way up to becoming world-class directors like James Cameron or Christopher Nolan, or producers like Jerry Bruckheimer. Most in TV and film production are one part of a big machine that's often project-based, so financial stability can be a challenge. Number 9, pediatric nurse. Quote, everyone in nursing school talks about how much they want to work with kids. The reality is that a pediatric nurse sees more cases of abuse and neglect than any other specialty. Doesn't matter where you are at a pediatric hospital, it's the thing you see most. I've seen so many Department of Child Services caseworkers that I've gotten to know some of them personally. Sure, working with children and adolescents is great, but people don't think about the most essential piece of that puzzle, which is their families. It doesn't matter how good care you give to those kids. If you don't loop the parents into that care, you may as well just not be doing anything for them, end quote. Wow, yeah, you always think about the difficulty of coping with the deaths of patients that these nurses and doctors have to deal with sometimes, but being exposed to cases of abuse of children from parents or relatives is something I never even thought about. Just heartbreaking. Number 10, video editor. Quote, what I hate so much is that when you send a draft or edit to the client or boss, they mostly seem so ungrateful. Just make this easy change and we'll be good to go. No, a-hole, that's not an easy change. I do video editing on top of graphic design, and people just seem so unappreciative of how much time and effort goes into a quick little video, end quote. Yeah, video editing has to have one of the highest instances of people thinking changes take like 30 minutes when in reality it can take hours for one small tweak. Gotta love it every time the boss says, that shouldn't take too long, right? Actually, it will take too long. You should really try doing it. Number 11, baker. Quote, coming into work at 3 or 4 in the morning so you can have 6 a.m. baked goods is miserable. Ooh, you must love the way you smell when you go home. Nope, I go home smelling like burnt oven, end quote. Yes, being a baker means a lot of early mornings and working long hours. It's also physically demanding because you're standing all the time or lifting heavy bags of sugar and flour or kneading and shaping dough. Many bakers still love the artistry of their craft and the happiness they bring to others watching them eat their delicious creations, of course, but It all does come at a significant cost. Number 12, video game tester. Quote, I've been working in the game industry for 6 years now and teaching for 2. Testing video games is thought to be just, oh, you just play video games all day? LOL. But it's actually very specific and arduous. First of all, there's a bunch of testing methodologies such as load soak testing, white room testing, version testing, to name a few. But the most common one is functionality testing, which is, so if I walk into that corner with a shotgun in my inventory, I can clip through the wall, but if I have my M16 in my inventory, I don't clip through, end quote. Yeah, I mean, once you're forced to do what you love to do, it starts becoming a lot less fun, right? Especially if you're not actually playing the game, but constantly looking for bugs and things that could go wrong so that others can have fun while playing. Yeah, that doesn't sound very fun at all. Number 13, working in a flower shop. Quote, it's just like any other retail job, but people constantly tell you how fun your job must be. Also, helping grieving families choose flowers is not fun. Another user writes, for sure, dealing with brides, dealing with their mothers, funerals, sitting in traffic, making deliveries, waking up super early to get to the flower market, and so much bleach, end quote. For those who didn't understand the bleach comment, because I sure didn't, apparently bleach is added to the water in the vase to keep harmful bacteria from growing and killing the flowers. But in terms of working in a flower shop, yeah, this just sounds like another line of work where you constantly have to deal with people, often during one of the most important events of their lives, which just sounds frustrating and very stressful. Number 14, scientist. Quote, well, I'm a scientist. I don't know if people usually think of that career as fun, but I think people think it's a lot more eureka and a lot less, this data has to be manually processed for 600 hours before I can analyze it. Another user writes, as a bioscientist, it's never really eureka and much more, are my cells dead? Are my fruit flies okay? Are they going to fix the microscope? Will the microscope ever be free to book? And a large part of my day is spent just doing tasks I need to do to keep my work running, i.e. making buffers, sorting fly stocks, splitting cells, cleaning things, etc. End quote. Yeah, when most people think of scientists, I'm sure they think of guys like Thomas Edison or Nikola Tesla, experimenting with different gadgets and inventing things constantly, when in reality, a lot of it is probably very painstakingly tedious work. Number 15, paleontologist. Quote, you don't get to work with full dinosaur skeletons and do all kinds of awesome expeditions. You're mostly sitting at a desk looking at some pictures and logging stuff on your computer, maybe examining a fossil occasionally. If you're lucky, you can go on a real dig and, oh my god, spend hours in the hot sun dusting off rocks, end quote. Okay, I'm not sure if this person is a real paleontologist or just making fun of them, but either way, they do bring up a good point. As a paleontologist, you're probably not digging up T-Rexes and saber-toothed tigers most of the time, but instead doing CT scans and 3D printing and computer modeling to try and identify and classify certain fossils. Yet another example of a profession that in reality is probably very tedious and boring work. Number 16, character performer at Disney. Quote, don't get me wrong, there are some amazing perks and truly magical moments. I know I'm super lucky and tons of people would love to be in my shoes, but the day-to-day work is exhausting in ways I never thought possible. Guests are ridiculously abusive. I've had things said and done to me I never would have imagined. The company isn't always great, it highly depends on your leadership, and there's so much focus on your body and face, good and bad, that it can be incredibly depressing and difficult emotionally. Plus, you have to accept that there's very little upward mobility. Most people grow out of it, and it's rough to know that one day you'll get too old or too fat, and you'll have to start all over in a new career field, end quote. So this person clearly played Tinkerbell or Cinderella or something, not one of those costume character roles like Mickey Mouse. In any case, I'm sure it is rewarding bringing joy and happiness to so many young kids, but some parents were awful to deal with, it sounds like. I'm sure the job doesn't pay that well either. In fact, according to Glassdoor, the average character performer at Disney gets paid only $21 an hour. Doesn't seem worth all the headache, if you ask me. Number 17, park ranger. Quote, don't get me wrong, I loved it, but a lot of days it was less talk about cool animals while wearing a ranger hat and more, the toilets are overflowing again, go clean the septic tank filter and stir the tank with a shovel, with a little bit of, hey, there's a methed out guy down by the bridge, can you convince him to leave without killing anyone? All for the low price of $26,000 a year with a college degree, end quote. Yeah, being around nature 24/7 and not being stuck behind a desk all day sounds great, but who knew cleaning out toilets and kicking out drugged out visitors was all part of the job description too? Number 18, lawyer. Quote, no, it isn't like they show on TV. Hey, finally cases before the judge. Crap, the other party didn't show up. Next date that judge is given is 3 months away. Now, a little bit about me. I've moved on from litigation to academia. Personally, it was the right decision for me as now I'm way less stressed and can work on things that intellectually stimulate me. Having said that, I need to clarify that law is still a very rewarding profession. There's something in it for everyone. For those who want to change the world, as well as for those who want to make money. It just demands too much of your time, plus the results of all your efforts are not immediate, and that can get stressful, end quote. Okay, well clearly this is litigation lawyer, but even for non-litigation lawyers, usually the work involves very long hours, especially when preparing for trials or negotiating deals. It's stressful meeting tight deadlines and client expectations, and there's usually tons of tedious drafting and redrafting of documents. But on the plus side, it is one of the highest paid professions at $140,000 to $260,000 a year according to Glassdoor, so at least you get well compensated for all your troubles. Number 19. Zookeeper. Quote, don't get me wrong, it's awesome to be around so many amazing animals and care for them, but the smells are ridiculously, insanely foul. I have a really strong stomach and it's still tough for me. We've had some interns quit over it. I was warned about the smells when getting into the field, but thought, oh, I volunteered at animal shelters. I know what animal stink smells like. Nope, not even close, end quote. Yeah, everyone thinks about how fun it'd be to be around animals all the time, but no one thinks about having to clean up their poop and vomit and whatever else they discharge. Apparently the worst smelling animals, according to former zookeepers, are vultures and penguins. Number 20, chef. Quote, all the flair and awesomeness they show on Vice and Netflix is far from what actually happens in the industry. It's not all fancy plates and tattooed guys doing their thing. It's a drug-infested, law-breaking work environment that only benefits the owners of a restaurant, end quote. Yeah, chefs often work long hours, including evenings, weekends, and holidays, because chefs need to be working when customers are dining in restaurants, which tend to be on the evenings, weekends, and holidays. The kitchen environment can also be very fast-paced and stressful, having to make all those dishes perfectly to meet customer expectations, all while coordinating with difficult kitchen staff. Well, there you have it, the top 20 jobs that are a lot less fun than most people expect. Have you been in any of these jobs, and if so, do you agree with the things that were said about them? Or is there a profession you thought should have been on the list, but wasn't? If so, let us know in the comments section below, but otherwise, hope you enjoyed this video and took a thing or two away.